Hello, everyone. Welcome to Tea and Chat Author Talk, hosted by Cup of Tea with That Book, Please, a blog website full of book reviews and recommendations related to news and related news reports, original writing, and of course, tea. My name is Whitney, and I am here with Tabrija, creator of the Cup of Tea with That Book, Please blog. And we'll be in conversation today with our very special guest, Yosha Gunasekera, author of The Midnight Taxi. We want to give a big thank you to our future viewers and listeners. You could be doing a number of things right now, but you decided to tune in for this virtual author event. Any links and resources mentioned or shared during this presentation will be shared or put on our blog for attendees to view later. And if you are a fan of books and the power of friendship, check out our other podcasts that we do with a few of our other friends, which is the Fake Book Club podcast. We are currently in our third season, and we talk about our favorite and not so favorite reads, current events, pop culture, nostalgia. And you can listen to wherever it is you get your podcasts at Fake Book and at fakebookclubpodcast.wordpress.com. And with that, I'm going to toss it over to Tabrija, who's going to introduce our guest. Take it over, Tabrija.
Thank you, Whitney, and hello. Yes, my name is Sabrisha Jones. I am the creator of the Cup of Tea with That Book Please website, and also one of the co-hosts of the Tea and Books chat. And I have the extreme pleasure of welcoming our guest for this episode, Yosha Gunasekera, to talk about her debut novel, The Midnight Taxi. So, Yosha, thank you so much for joining us this afternoon.
Thank you for having me. I'm so excited to be here.
So we're going to give a brief bio of our special guest. So Yosha Gunasekera is a Sri Lankan American attorney who represents people who have spent decades behind bars for crimes they did not commit. She teaches a course at Princeton University focused on wrongful conviction and exoneration. And Yosha is a former Manhattan public defender and has written and spoken extensively on the criminal legal system. So, with your very busy schedule, thank you again.
I'm delighted to be here. Thank you for having me.
And congratulations on your debut mystery novel, The Midnight Taxi. I think it's being clouded, but no, you can see it right here. Um, I This is one of my favorite mysteries of the year, and I'm not just saying that. It was this mystery really, it had everything that I wanted in a mystery book, but then also it had everything I wanted as a native New Yorker because this is a great New York story for just it had every element. There was a particular and we will dive more into this, but I do want to say that there was a particular scene where Siri and oh, I forgot her name, Amaya, I think
Mhm.
they're in Brooklyn to talk to the pizza owner. And when Siri is talking about the delicious smells of the pizza, I was immediately hungry. And then the next day, I was like, you know what? I'm craving for pizza. I have to go for pizza. So your writing had that effect that made me want to really appreciate the New York food that I have around in my neighborhood. But for those who have not had a chance to read The Midnight Taxi, could you give us a brief synopsis of the book?
Yeah, of course. And Teresa, thank you so much, and Whitney, for that kind introduction. I am so honored that you enjoyed my mystery because I know that both of you read such incredible books. So it's truly an honor. Thank you so much. And yeah, The Midnight Taxi is it's a murder mystery in which a New York City taxi cab driver, Siriwati Pereira, picks up a fare outside of Manhattan criminal court. And when she gets to her destination, to the passenger's destination, he's been murdered. So it's a locked cab mystery. And so she's arrested as the obvious and only suspect. And so she, alongside her public defender, Amaya, must travel across all five boroughs and Roosevelt Island and Rikers Island in search of clues to find the real killer before it's too late.
And also, I like because I'm a big fan of locked room mysteries. And so I've read them all. But the fact that you did this in a cab, in a taxi cab, that just like it blew my mind. I was like, this is the most creative way to to do a locked room, to put your own spin on it. It's like, why did you choose a taxi cab instead of like what most writers do, like a house or a manor house or country house or some other room that's somewhere else?
Yeah, absolutely. I think readers of mysteries really want something new and fresh. And I also wanted something new and fresh. So, what better than make the locked room, the proverbial locked room, on wheels? And I also thought it was a fun way to highlight people who I think are essential service people in New York City which are taxi cab drivers. I think so many of us have been in a taxi cab, and taxi cabs are such iconic parts of New York City. When you think New York City, you think yellow cab, but we so rarely explore the stories of the people who are driving those cabs. So I thought it was also really wonderful opportunity to highlight service workers, but also like the wonderful immigrant community that makes up New York City. And because she's a taxi cab driver, she of course knows like all the best places to eat and to go to. And so that also was like a fun way so I can insert that because one of my favorite things about New York City is just the amazing food and all across the city. And so it was also a way for me to channel that, and it kind of just conveniently worked out. So
I've I love the fact that the taxi driver is like a woman. It's just so rare to see. Obviously, like there's women in all fields and all like different service areas. Um, but I rarely see it in my personal New York. And I just think that just brings such a nuanced perspective, not just to like the book, but also the profession in general. Uh, was that always in your mind to have the taxi driver be a female protagonist, or was it like feedback, or was that always like your vision?
it actually wasn't always my vision. Originally, the taxi cab driver was a man, and so there was this interplay between him and his female public defender. But ultimately, we, based on some editorial feedback, decided, and I always, even when I was drafting it, I kind of in the back of my head was like, should this character be a woman? I think partially because I just write female characters, I think, in a way that it's based on my personal experience. And so, and also just like, I think we put a little bit of ourselves and the author into the book. And so I really actually appreciated that editorial feedback. And I think it actually made the novel a lot stronger. And I think it's just fun to be able to have a novel that has two women, who are also women of color, like lead the novel. I feel like you don't see that very often, unfortunately, and you don't see it in mysteries. Mysteries really have historically been a lot of like, white men, like the hard-boiled detective. And so it was a really special opportunity to kind of introduce that. And it's just a totally different experience. There's totally different, vulnerabilities when you are a woman who is driving a cab, at all hours of night. And I was able to kind of explore those issues, that in a way that I think was able to give Siri a depth that there wouldn't normally be if she had been a man.
Um, and I concur with with Whitney. It's like I really appreciate the fact that Siri was a female taxi driver. But it also seemed like you, as reading this, it seemed like you knew a lot about taxi cab life and culture. Did you have to, was this like based on personal knowledge, or did you have to like go and dive into some research in order to like build out Siri's character?
Yeah, that's a great question. The whole like seed of this novel started when I was actually a public defender in Manhattan and I was working night court and I was trying to get a cab. It was 1 a.m. Night court is exactly what it sounds. You're representing New Yorkers who have been accused of crimes at night. It goes till 1 a.m. and I was trying to get a cab home and I saw a yellow cab waiting. So I got into the cab, and apparently the guy who was driving the cab waits there because he wants to pick up attorneys who have been in night court so he can hear like what's happening. He was interested in true crime, and it really was like my character Siri. And it was just like this funny moment because most times, like, you're not having a conversation with your taxi cab driver. And we're all just so busy rushing from place to place. But it was this like really kind of special moment of like human connection at this like late night hour while we're crossing the Brooklyn Bridge and we're talking about like the cases that night. And it just got me thinking more about, again, taxi cab drivers and the lives that they lead. And then at the time, I also was dating my now husband. He was my boyfriend at the time, and he comes from a family of taxi cab drivers. His dad was drove a cab for a while, and his grandfather drove a cab and actually got shot in the head while driving a cab, lived to tell the tale, took a brief hiatus, and then went back to taxi cab driving. So it's also been part of this like family lore of like cab drivers. And then you start to think, I started to see them everywhere. They are everywhere, but I was really, because I had been thinking about this like taxi cab driver character, I noticed there's a scene that occurs in Curry Hill, and there's a restaurant, Curry in a Hurry. Right beside Curry in a Hurry, there's a taxi stand of taxi cab drivers who look like me, who are getting, late night food. They're getting chai to fuel their, late nights. And it really, I started to see and really taxi cabs drivers everywhere. And I really felt like there was a story there. So from there, but like the idea of the story, but then also like I did some additional research, but it really was these kind of lived experiences that I was having that made me kind of imagine like what someone's life would be if they were, driving a cab.
You know, you librarians also have a lot of tea. I'm just letting you know. If you ever
I
wanted
bet
to
you, I believe it. I believe it.
if you ever wanted to write a mystery, another one of many, I'm sure, a mystery about a closed library murder. We have
I
so
would
much tea. We have so
I
much. We
would
could
love
definitely
that. Well, the New York Public Library does play, and librarians do play a role in my second novel. So
Ooh.
ask and your wish will be granted. So
If you need references, if you need like clarification, Tarisha and I, we're here for you for
I
sure.
may take you up on that actually. Thank you.
But speaking of New York Public Library and just New York in general, The Midnight Taxi is a New York City and NYC immigrant story. What did you want to make sure to include to make this story very authentic, where New Yorkers could identify?
Yeah, I mean, I love New York City so much. I mean, I really think it's the greatest city in the world, and I think that so many people come to New York City, and me, I've lived in the city for a decade, over a decade now. But prior to that, I, like many tourists to New York City, thought of Times Square, thought of Madison Square Garden, and then because of my job and because of my interest in New York City, I started to explore all the boroughs. I started to, I've been to Staten Island and the restaurants there, and I've spent a lot of time in the Bronx and in Queens, and I really wanted to highlight the fact that New York City just has an incredible culture, incredible food, incredible just things to see if you only venture outside of that small radius. I remember I was traveling somewhere for work and someone was like, "Oh, I was just in New York City and the best restaurant I went to was the Applebee's in Times Square." And look, I'm from Ohio. I love a chain restaurant. I love a chain restaurant. But I was just thinking, there are so many other places that you can only get in New York City. And so for me, I really wanted to highlight that. And so a lot, I name some restaurants by name, but really the restaurants that I don't, they are based on very real places. Like the pizza place in Brooklyn is L&B Spumoni Gardens. Like I love that pizza and it's an iconic. I think they've opened up a place in Brooklyn Heights. But when I was going there, I was traveling all the way. It was like a 45-minute trip for me, but it was totally worth it because the food is amazing, and that's how I feel about Queens and the Bronx. And there's just so much culture. People think Italian food. To me, it's Arthur Avenue in the Bronx, and so many people don't know that. And what was great and the feedback that I got from people reading it were like telling me like, oh, like I want to go to other parts of the city because you've inspired me. And so that was kind of my goal, just to highlight how like just vibrant and rich the city is. And so it was just so fun because, I had to go to restaurants for research purposes as well. So, it was a business expense for me to, go to Queens and eat, at five different restaurants in one day, just, sampling my way through. So, it's really hard work writing a book. It's this type of book, it requires a lot of eating. So, but someone's got to do it. So.
Hey, that is between you and IRS. You don't have to justify. um, but first, whoever said that that Applebee's was the best restaurant they did not venture out of Times
Mhm.
Square. That Applebee's is not that great. And second, when I read about when Siri was mentioning like, like the little Chinatown and the Arthur Avenue in the Bronx, I was like, yes, finally someone mentioned, because I feel like Arthur Avenue in the Bronx gets continuously overlooked as being the original Little Italy because they have
Mhm.
so many good restaurants there. It's like Whitney and I always love traveling
Oh
over
yeah, it's the
there.
best part. It's
It
one of my favorite parts of the Bronx. Like both Tabrisha and I are in the Bronx. And it's just I think I'm a little bit closer. I'm
yeah.
like because it's on the other side of the zoo. It's on the other side of the zoo kind
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
of. But yeah, Arthur Ave is just amazing. Like there is a library over there. There's
Mhm.
the market, the which I would normally just go for like the beer hall. I don't know if it's still there, but also
I
like
think
getting
it's
all
still there.
the sausages and you see them
Mhm.
making the cigars, but also
Yeah.
like the Italian food. So I appreciated that. Shout out to, did you go, what other research in the Bronx? Because we're very Bronx centric,
Yeah,
obviously.
yeah. I got married at the Bronx Zoo. So the second book has a big scene at the Bronx Zoo. I have some of my clients live in the Bronx. So I was going up, there was a period of time where I was going up pretty frequently. Some happier places like Arthur Avenue and restaurants, and other times I was heading up to, some hospitals to see my sick clients. But it's just like, I feel like there's just so much to see and so much to eat. And it was so fun. I like the Bronx Zoo was just like a dream wedding. And it was just like, it was so fun to be able to, just be part of like such an iconic part of New York City culture. I mean, originally my family isn't from New York City, and they were like, "You're getting married at a zoo," and I was like, "No, no, this is the zoo." I was like, "They have a show about the Bronx Zoo. It's so iconic, and it's just like to me, it's just like the architecture. It's just like." incredibly beautiful. And it was such an honor to have a wedding there. And everyone was just like the nicest. So if you ever want to have an event there, any sort of life event, I think a birthday party, I heard they do all sorts of things. And so I can highly, highly recommend it. But
Yeah, they do. They do a lot of stuff, and especially and the right across the street, the New York Botanical Garden,
yes, yeah.
which
Mhm.
is also very beautiful as
Gorgeous.
well.
Yeah.
I was just there this past Friday, and it was just to see everything in bloom. And it's just, and you kind of forget that you are in the Bronx. You're in New York City because it's just very quiet and very like like um like so secular that you just feel like you're separate from everything else. It's just like it's very gorgeous. So I highly recommend that too. Um, but back to the book, you have Siri, who is she has also like she deals with a lot of stuff with and don't want to give any spoilers because it dives in more into her personality. But the one big thing as you is she is going along in trying to clear her name is that she is a big fan of true crime podcasts.
Mhm.
And we did want to ask, like, are you also a fan of true crime podcasts like Siri? I wouldn't think you were because you deal with it, dealt with this, but I don't want to. We don't want to assume on anyone's part.
Yeah, prior to being an attorney, I loved true crime podcasts. I loved Law and Order SVU. I really like ate it all up. And I think it's one of the reasons like I was interested in the criminal legal system. But much like Siri, like I watched, she binge watches Law and Order and listens to all these podcasts. She's like, oh, I know how the system works, which is how I felt, before I went to law school and before I became a lawyer. And then you realize that, like, a lot of the bad parts, they don't show on those podcasts. And it's not to say like true crime is bad, but true crime is entertainment, right? So it's not necessarily, um, accurate in its representation, right? So like I wasn't appreciating, that sometimes like district attorneys withhold evidence. I wasn't appreciating the things that Siri faces, as a person of color, as a woman of color who becomes ensnared in the criminal legal system. Those are not always highlighted on your podcast. And especially like on TV, it's just like there's a bad guy, there's a good guy. The person who's arrested is always this like creepy, horrible person. The defense attorney has like a hole in their blazer and is like secretly like, doing shady things when in reality, like the criminal legal system is so much more nuanced and the criminal legal system disproportionately affects Black and brown people. It affects people who disproportionately based on their socioeconomic uh, levels. And so I think to me, I wanted a novel that kind of talked about those things in an approachable way, but from like a Siri is kind of like the every person. Like I'm not expecting people to necessarily, if they don't interact with the criminal legal system, to completely understand all the nuances. But when she gets arrested, she's like, wait a second, like I'm innocent. Like I shouldn't be arrested. I shouldn't be, I exercise my Miranda rights. Like, why are the police still questioning me? And I think, what I've learned from, being an attorney is that oftentimes, people's rights are not always followed. And so I really wanted to highlight that. Like a lot of times people say I want a lawyer and lo and behold, they're in a police station for hours. And so we see that at the Innocence Project where I work, like all of my clients are people who are innocent and have been wrongly accused of crimes and are spending 20, 30 years in prison for crimes they haven't committed. And the vast majority of my clients are people of color, they're Black and brown people. Um, and so I really wanted to there's some value that Siri gets from true crime and that, she understands a little bit of how investigations are done. It's not, again, it's not black and white. It's not like all true crime is bad, right? Some of it can be very valuable, but it's also only like one small part of the picture. So I think she has this character arc where she is a little bit naive. And then once she's in it herself, again, she's like, why wouldn't you talk to the police if you're not guilty? And then she's realizing, wait a second, I'm innocent and everything I'm saying is being used against me. And we, as practitioners, we see that unfortunately all the time. So I wanted to make some of these kind of inaccessible ideas about the criminal legal system more accessible to people who are not normally, dealing with it day to day.
And you mentioned your work with the Innocent Project. Can you talk a little bit more about like how did your work with the Innocence Project like influence your work in the Midnight Taxi?
Yeah, so both my work as at the Innocence Project, and then also I was a Manhattan public defender for 6 years. I represented hundreds of New Yorkers accused of everything from like stealing toothpaste to, attempted murder. And I think you just see how the system really is fundamentally unfair. I mean, there's a scene where Siri is, they set bail on her, and bail is basically just an amount of money that someone has to pay for their freedom. And it's like there is no more obvious thing in the criminal legal system that says like if you're poor, you're going to be put behind bars, and if you're rich, you can buy your way out. And so the fact that that's even still part of our criminal legal system to me is just like fundamentally just so insane. And so I think, of course, it's a work of fiction, but I wanted to be honest about like the arraignment scene. And people are like, do they really treat people like that? Yes, they do. We see it all the time. We see people who are going through like drug withdrawals or having a mental health crisis. And instead of treating those people like people and in humane ways with compassion because they're having a medical emergency, like sometimes they're ignored. And it's really horrifying, and I've seen it firsthand. And so it's just, or the information disadvantage. A lot of people said it's not possible that the prosecution wouldn't give you X, Y, or Z. And it's like they have a period of time to turn over all of that stuff. So Siri and Amaya are really like flying blind when they're trying to investigate their own case. And we all know, either from true crime or just from common sense, that the days after a crime, the hours after a crime, are the most pivotal in getting, collecting evidence and getting information from people. But, really the defense attorneys are really hamstrung in trying to get that information. And I think, again, how defense attorneys, how people who are charged with crimes or accused with crimes are portrayed in popular culture, we kind of accept that as like, that's okay. And if the police have arrested someone, they must have done something bad. We don't assume like maybe the police made a snap judgment based on the way someone looks or just based on a small amount of evidence. And so I think that's kind of what I wanted people to take away. Because again, like a lot of people can't imagine that innocent people get arrested and let alone get convicted. We want to believe that the system always gets it right. It's helpful to sleep at night, right? And a lot of the crimes in which I represent people are particularly heinous and horrible. So I get how a jury is like, yeah, someone needs to go to prison for this because it's a horrible crime. But then, they don't listen to the fact that there's not very much evidence, or that person has had a terrible attorney who didn't listen to them in the first place. And that's kind of why I like how Siri kind of does try to take a front seat, because in reality, are people investigating their own cases? Maybe not. But I think the point of that was that we need to listen to the people who are arrested. I think attorneys also think that they know better. And so when I get a case as an Innocence Project attorney, it's been through the system. They've had a trial, they've been convicted, they've exhausted all their post-conviction. And then, we take them on for representation. And a lot of times, they are like, I told my attorney 10 times that I had an alibi or to investigate this or to do this. And their attorney just like didn't listen to them because the attorney thought they knew better or was lazy or, was overworked and didn't have the time or resources to investigate. And it's horrifying because it literally is someone's life on the line. And it is so hard to undo something, a conviction, than it is to like investigate at the time of trial. So those are some of the things that I, wanted to, and I wanted to put into the book, but also I didn't want to like, I wanted people to still engage and still find it to be like something that's fast paced. And so people are like, wow, it's really interesting that it also has humor. But I think also like we just live in such a like dark times. So while I want to like talk about all these things, they are heavy, and so I wanted to also balance it out with like a little bit of a lighter voice, some fun, something fast paced. So it's kind of like bringing, I hope, more readers in than would normally if this was kind of like a darker book.
I think it definitely highlights the inequity of our justice system. We don't like we're all like black and brown in this like conversation, so it's not like a huge surprise about the inequity of it. And you do, I wonder if for me as a reader, but also just as a black person in America, just I tend to think more on the innocent side of like when you see people or when you see people interacting with the police in a negative way, just, the news and the history and as we walk in our black and brown bodies in this country. So I was obviously going to root for Siri the whole time. And it was just like nice that we do get to see the protagonists like work their own case, figure it out. Because sometimes, like, you are like your own like you have to be your own advocate, which is kind of unfortunate. But I do like the partnership with Amaya. And I think working together that way just really helped with the story and moved it forward. But I kind of want to ask like a more like a professional question of like how long have you been a lawyer? And like both before and including with and before the Innocence Project, and how do you balance that with your writing?
Yeah, so I've been a lawyer for over 10 years now. So I finally got my loan forgiveness, which was amazing. I didn't think that was going to come through because I have done 10 years of public service. I was a public defender immediately out of law school. I had done a bunch of public defense internships. Prior to that, I was really passionate about representing people accused of crimes. Especially in like a urban setting. And I did that for 6 years in Manhattan, which was, was really crazy because when I started, that was before they had any sort of bail reform. So I was representing people who they were asking for, nights of jail for someone who didn't pay a subway fare. Like it was just the most like manifest injustice. I was like, I will pay the 275 because it costs like even from like a monetary perspective, it's like thousands of dollars to house someone for a week in Rikers. And so I did that for 6 years, and then I went on to the Innocence Project where I have been for the past 4+ years. I'm currently on leave, but I will return, and I represent people who have been wrongfully accused. I do some other things there, and yeah, I mean, in terms of finding time, I think that, I needed like some sort of creative outlet. Like, I think originally I was just writing for fun and kind of writing for myself, but would get up early in the mornings and I would write before work. Also, like sometimes there's weird pockets of downtime, like you're waiting for your case to be called in court, and I would kind of just like scribble some notes. Or strangely, like you can't bring in any electronics into prison or jails, which makes sense, but I would like just be there with my yellow legal pad, and sometimes I would just like jot down things while I was waiting. So there was little pockets of time, but really the reality is like just for me, it was just trying to force myself to write, every day or every other day because really, like, you'll always find something that is more important than writing. Like it was never like I could always be working on like on my actual work, or I could be, seeing a friend. But if I was like, I'm gonna carve like 5 a.m. to 6 a.m. or 5 a.m. to 6:30 a.m. and write, like I think people think that they need to have like hours and hours of uninterrupted time to write a novel, but like a few, like 100 words, like every day, every other day, or even every week, like that they add up eventually. Eventually, you will have a full length novel. And so I think that that is just finding time, but also like it was kind of like a self-care thing too. Like I just like for me, it was a way to kind of I think seeing a lot of injustice in the system, it was kind of a way for me to kind of like fictionalize it and like get it out in a almost kind of like, and again, not I've written a lot of things that will never see the light of day, and maybe they're more like diary entries, but it's like it was good therapy and it was good self-care too, for me, which I think like in this type of career where it's like pretty depressing and it's pretty like there are so many inspiring things. I love my clients, but it is like work where it's just like it was good for me to have a different outlet apart from my 9 to 5. I hope I answered your question. I just kind of I've been going on tangents and
No,
I
it's
know
perfect.
I'm ultimately
That
getting at what you
100%.
want, but
No, that 100% answered our question. Like Teresa and I like to write. Teresa obviously created the blog, so I'm just looking for my own set of motivation of getting my, continuing to write, getting my work out there. But surprisingly, being a librarian takes a lot of energy.
oh, I believe it. I believe it. And sometimes when you're like around something so much, it's why I don't watch like any like I used to even like the like ethical true crime. Like I don't really watch it anymore because I'm like that's my day job. Like that's what I engage with all day. And I think that like fatigue is absolutely real. So I would only imagine like being around books and writing all day like can make it difficult to then go home and write. I totally think that makes sense. So,
Yeah, and we are just like so exhausted. And I am just ashamed to say that sometimes I will come home and just binge watch Law and Order because I just like continuously watch it over. But I do, ever since like reading this book, I do look at it at a new eye because I'm like, okay, I don't think all of this would be plausible and happening, but it just gives me time just like to shut my mind off of everything, especially after a long day of work. But but we did. So this is like a mystery novel, and well, me more than Whitney. I'm a big mystery fan. So we wanted to ask, like, what would you say it was your favorite like mystery subgenre or mystery trope that you like to read?
I really like the locked room mystery because I think it really adds like how could this happen? Like I remember, I mean it's cliche, but like I remember reading Then There Were None when I was a kid and being like this is the greatest piece of literature known to man. And it just like I think it just like so shaped me in a way of like how is this happening on this place? And then, there's a lot of like Japanese locker room mysteries. And then it's just like, it's such a fascinating trope to me. And I think that there's a lot of people have done like fun plays on it. And I find I would have to say that that's mine because it defies disbelief. And I love like the kind of atmospheric of a lot of these locker room mysteries. Like it's just, you want to read it with like, you want to get cozy, you want to get a cup of tea. I like somehow imagine myself on like a stormy British Isle, like, like that kind of like, who doesn't love that? If you love mysteries, like that kind of atmospheric, dark and stormy rainy night. Like it's cliche, but it's cliche for a reason because it just makes you want to literally snuggle up with a good book and a cup of tea. So,
I did just that when I first read And Then There Were None, because
mm,
I was in the UK in the Lake District and it
mm,
was raining outside and I could not put it down. I honestly thought someone was going to barge into my hotel room because I was trying to figure out how are these people dying? And
mhm.
there was no one else on the island. And I that it is my favorite mystery of all time. It is, and locked room mysteries are my favorite mystery trope. And that is like the OG of all of them. A lot of authors try to mimic that style, but Agatha Christie just she got it to the point where it just shook people, chilled them to the bone.
Yeah.
And even to the last page, you're still chilled. You're like, oh my God, how did you do do this? So I completely agree with you. Like Locked Room Mysteries, that's my absolute favorite.
Yeah. Have you seen the BBC miniseries that
Oh
they're
my God,
so
yes.
good?
Of
It's
course you saw it.
so
I've watched it
good.
like 4 times. Like everybody I like recommend to, and I'm like, do you want me to watch it with you? Because I will, because it's so good.
Especially when like the booming voice comes out of no, it was
Mhm.
I jump scare. I was like, oh my
Yeah.
God, what just happened?
It's actually like pretty scary.
It is. It's so scary. I was like, oh my God, they did it so well.
They
And
were-
that like catapult them to do more Agatha Christie
Mhm.
adaptations in like that similar style in a
Yeah,
sense. Yeah.
it's great. Like great.
I have a follow-up question. How do you write, like you personally, but I guess if you how do you write a closed closed room, closed space mystery? Like do you have like the perpetrator and like the reason why, and then you kind of like work backwards?
Mhm. That's a great question. I mean, how I wrote my first novel and how I should have written it were two very different things. I basically was like, oh, I can just keep it all in my head and figure it out as I go. And I like wrote something, and my sister is always, she's my older sister, she's always been like my first reader. She's a much better writer than I am. And she read it and she was like, there's 12 plot holes. I guessed who did it like a third of the way in. And it was just like, I cannot keep it in my head. Some people can. There's some authors who are like, I have this intricate, like Dan Brown level plot in my head. I cannot do that. And that's what I learned with my first book. And I think part of the reason it took me forever to like get a draft was because I was editing it, because it was constantly like, it just, I needed to have more twists. I mean, I changed the ending. Like the ending that when the first draft was totally different from the ending of the final draft. There were so many more twists and turns in the final draft than there were in the beginning because it just like you start writing and you get kind of for me, I got kind of too absorbed on a line level of things versus like seeing the kind of overarching plot. So now for book two, I did a very detailed outline, which was great because I could see like, okay, this plot there's a plot hole here and this ending is a little too predictable and I need to like work out this, like, and so for me now, I need to plot the book. And I find that I can actually, with the detailed outline, I can write it a lot more quickly than I can if it's just in my head. Because also, like, day to day, like, maybe my memory is bad, but I think I forget things. Like, I just can't keep it. And I think it's a really personal thing. So I think for me, the plot is great. And then I can kind of think it over and I can kind of tinker with things. And yeah, so I think that's generally my writing process, and also it helps with like pacing. So I try to follow like I love those like Save the Cat resources. Like they have a website. It's basically about like how to write a novel. And so what they you can it's free online. They have a book, but I use like the what they call the beat sheets, which is basically like will like show you like the different acts, like the three act structure, and they'll break it down for your favorite book. So if you're like writing a romance, you can look at like a romance book and you can see like where certain things are supposed to happen. Because again, I thought like I'm a voracious reader. I love to read. Like I should be able to write a novel, right? Like I should be able to like I get the structure of a novel and I didn't have it right. Like to me, there was something very different for reading than for actually writing. And so the pacing was also totally off because I didn't know, like, the first 10%, like that's the introductory action. And then there's the rising tension. And then there's like the dark of night where all hope is like all of these different terms. And so that also, when I plot, I break it down into those various sections because really all books follow like a three act structure and they can be very different in the ways that those acts look like, but the beat sheets. And so I took like books like I don't a book that I had already read, I think it was like Girl on the Train, which was like a thriller, and you can see how it falls into that. And so every book of course is going to be a little bit different, but plotting helped me get the pacing right too.
First, I feel like also your goal is to try to write a mystery so you can stomp your sister.
Yep. Oh, definitely, definitely. If she can guess the ending, then I know it's no good, and I gotta
It's just like
change it.
it's like crap. I gotta start all over.
Yep. I really have
Um,
to change that ending. So,
um, but I think that's a perfect segue into our next question, and especially with all of like the development and the research you had to do in order to like make sure you're plotting your stories. Like, what do you feel that makes like the great elements of a mystery? What does a writer need to make sure that they have a good mystery in print?
yeah, I think that the writer needs to have some sense of like authenticity to what they're writing. And it doesn't necessarily need to be like a personal lived experience, but it does need to be something that feels believable because I think there's parts of mysteries that can feel so incredulous that it's like, really? Like, is that like you want to sort of, even though it's fiction and even though it can be totally like, even like science fiction, like even when it's like totally out of the realm of possibility, a part of you wants to be like, oh yeah, that still could happen, right? And so I think that that is really important. And I think it's really just important to kind of, with the market being so saturated, to have some sort of like originality to it. And it doesn't necessarily need to be like the plot itself, but something about it needs to be, I think, original. Otherwise, like, how is it separating itself from, other books in the genre? Because it is like I go into all my local bookstores and they curate just a really small selection of books. And so I think even to get published, it's just such a competitive. So I think like authenticity and originality are really important to have. And I also just think it's something, I think you can't really write to the trends. I think you just have to also write what you enjoy and what you love. And I think like a lot of people actually do have really interesting stories to tell. Like, and I think that you just have to, I think if you write for what you think people want, you lose that like authenticity piece as well.
I think that's such a great message to like any writer. Just be true to yourself is I think that's a great message. um I know we spoke earlier a couple minutes ago in this conversation that you read uh Agatha Christie's and then there were none, but are there other authors or mystery books that have influenced you as a writer or that you just love in general?
Yeah, I mean, I love the classic mysteries, like, Wilkie Collins is, I love like a golden age mystery. So I love all of those. I love Sherlock Holmes. I love all of that. But I think what those are missing is obviously there's a lot of like white protagonists and a lot of white writers. So I really have tried, like when I, go into a bookstore, the books that I'm looking for are mysteries and thrillers written by writers of color. There's a really incredible group of us. It's called Crime Writers of Color. And Walter Mosley and Kelly Garrett started it. Kelly Garrett is a mentor of mine. I absolutely love her books. She writes the Hollywood Homicide series, which was, I believe, Time's like 100 best mysteries of all time. She writes Missing White Woman was her most recent novel, and she really highlights, her own personal lived experiences in those books. I really like Alyssa Cole's books. She has, I think, When No One Is Watching, and it was just such a great book about like the gentrification of Brooklyn and just really like smart and current. I like there is, I forget, it's like Murder in Waikiki. That's not the right um, I'll think of the right title, but I think there's so many authors of color that are not necessarily getting the airtime that other people are getting. I think one of my like bones to pick about the publishing industry is that we often just hear the same names over and over again. And I think that there's so many, and generally a lot of those same names are white women or white men. And I think like publishing still has like a really long way to go. So I think when we're like using, I don't really have much of a platform, but when I can, I think that there's a lot of, I like to recommend books where like the protagonist is a person of color and is also written by a person of color because there's just so many wonderful books out there. But again, because it's like this publicity machine, like if you don't have, the status of like an Emily Henry, people might not be hearing about you. And I think that there's so many great books out there. So yeah, if you haven't read Kelly Garrett, she writes really, really compulsive, like fast-paced mysteries, and really recommend her books.
I haven't read, um, I've heard of Kelly Garrett. I haven't read any of her books, but I do want to. A friend of mine, or a friend of ours, Adina, she read, I think it wasn't her debut, but it was like her standalone. I think it was like a sister, but I think it takes place in the Bronx. She
Yes,
read that
yes.
one and she really enjoyed it. She recommended it to me. She's like, you will like this one." So, I definitely have to read that. But I do agree, and I know that's what like Whitney and I try to do, that we try to promote authors of color because it's like you said, the publishing is just so saturated. The stories that are being like, put into the machine keeps being the same. And then the like authors of color keep being pushed down and they're not really highlighted as much. And we see that um being as readers and also as librarians as well, I continue to see like if you look at our high hold lists, they're always the same authors over and over again. So it's just like I always try to tell patrons like, hey, while you're waiting to hold for this book, we have these other books that might meet your interest as well. Um, so yeah, it is like having, even you don't have to have a big platform. It's just like something like this to have conversations to make sure that a variety of different authors get the equal attention that they deserve. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. And we can only have more diversity in traditional publishing if we are the people requesting those books from our libraries or purchasing those books from our local bookstore or like calling our local bookstore and saying like, "Hey, I saw you didn't have this author and this book. Like, I'd like to order it." I think that actually really does matter. And so I think it's just like the more we talk about it, the more we champion those books, like I think. And frankly, like they're great books. Like at the end of the day, like we only have so much time. I'm actually have to be, I just had a baby. I have to be very selective of what I read, but these books are the good books. Like they're the really, really good books. So I'm reading them because they stand on their own merit as just truly excellent compulsive reading. Because like at the end of the day, I think that's really what matters. Like, is it a well-written book? Is it something that's keeping my attention and am I interested in it? And so ultimately that's, guiding me. And, these books are, the books by my friends and crime writers of color are really excellent. So it's nice.
That's just great that you have found such an amazing like community that way. But we do want to, we have a few more questions for you, and we want to circle back to your characters. So which character would you say you most identify with, Siri or Amaya?
I think both of them, honestly. I think they both have a little part of me. Maybe it's because I'm a Gemini. They say we're two-faced, but I don't know if that's true. But I think that there is, I think for Amaya, I think the fact that, she's a strong public defender character. I think she feels like she has to be like very serious and professional and have a strong voice because she is a woman of color in a predominantly white space. The law has historically catered towards certain types of people. And I also think she feels like as a public defender, she doesn't want her clients to feel like they're getting some second-rate attorney because they can't afford representation. She wants them to feel like they're getting good representation. And so I felt those struggles and I felt like sometimes I was othered because of how I looked. And so I relate to her kind of like hard exterior a little bit. Like I feel like when I go into court, like it's all business because somebody's life and literally their freedom is depending on it. And so like the seriousness and passion she has for her job, I think I really related to. But I also think, Siri is relatable and her like in some ways is a little bit of a foil to Amaya. Like she kind of just wants to see like the goodness in the world and she wants to, she's feeling like she wants to have friends and like she hasn't figured out her life. And I think that that is like a very deeply relatable, at least to me. Like I feel like I keep waiting for the point in my life where I'm like, oh, I finally figured it out. And it's like, I'm not I'm still figuring it out. And I'm still like, I wrote part of this during COVID and I was living alone in a studio apartment, which I loved, but then suddenly COVID hit and then, I felt very isolated from the world. And so I really related to Siri's character of just like wanting to be among the people and just like be with her friends and wanting to, have that large group of friends. And so I think at the end of the day, both of them, they appear to be very different, but I think what is similar to both of them is they're both like sensitive, introspective characters, in a way that they don't really want to admit, but ultimately you kind of see as the story goes on.
And speaking of both Siri and Maya, so there is, and I think I mentioned this to you, Yosha, last year when we were at Thriller Fest. There's a program that I do with our friend Dueling Detectives, where we pit two detectives against one another to see, and we would ask like which would solve the case first. So we wanted to ask, who would you pit Siri and Amaya against? Like which detective duo? And who do you feel that, and you can use your bias because you did create Siri and Amaya, uh, who would you think would solve the case first?
Well, I mean, classic duo is probably like Sherlock Holmes and Watson. That just comes to mind immediately. And I would say that Siri and Amaya would win because I think they're scrappy and I think they're able to think out of the box and I think they're able to kind of cut through the assumptions that people make about certain things. And I think that they are, Siri is, even though there is a little bit of naivete there, like she's a taxi cab driver. She's a, New Yorker. She's smart. Like she knows, she like keeps her head on a swivel. Like she is, she has a good understanding of the world around her. And I think that there is like a savviness that people who, we have to, like, if you're running, you have to have a savviness to kind of live and thrive in the city. And so I would pit her against them. And I think that both of them would come on top.
I don't disagree. Girl power
Yeah.
all the way. But one of my favorite, and then we'll transition into our next question. One of my favorite iteration of Sherlock Holmes is obviously the one that's based in New York with Lucy Liu and Johnny Lee Miller. So I still think Siri and Man would win, but I also think that version because they are technically both New Yorkers. It'd be like New Yorker versus New Yorker. I think that would be such an interesting well, technically he's British, but I think that would be an interesting competition versus like the classic Arthur Conan Doyle version.
I love that. I actually haven't watched the show. I really
Oh
need
my
to.
God, you
Is
have
it
to.
amazing?
I think it's on Hulu.
Yeah,
It's called
It's
what?
on
Is it
Hulu.
elementary?
Yeah.
elementary. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
It it does get like the show itself and it does get a little like beleaguered a little bit in like the later seasons, but the chemistry and like the camaraderie between Johnny Lee Miller and Lucy Liu, and even like the police captains and the spin on Moriarty is actually what pulled it in for me. And I
Mm.
think it was at a weird time because I want to say it's like right before COVID started or like I know or
Yeah,
like a writer's
way
strike or something happened.
it was
So
way
like
before. And it
yeah,
was like right after, I want to say a year or two after the BBC one.
yeah.
Because a lot of people thought they're like, oh my God, they're copying the BBC Sherlock. And they're like, no, we asked them. It was fine. They were okay with it.
But would love to see them reunited. In the world of reboots, would love to see them come back actually. Um, but with that, we're going to transition into a series of this or that questions to get to know you better as a writer and a lawyer, maybe. And Sabrisha is going to fire them off. We do have a secret competition between she and I based on a response to one of the questions. So we'll see. I feel like I'm going to lose this round and it'll be tied. But interesting to hear your response. There is no pressure on you. There's no stakes for you in this. It's just a quiet competition between me and Teresa.
I love it. Well, I can't wait to know which question it's going to be. You have to reveal that at the end.
All right. So first one is paperback or hardback.
Paperback. It's just lighter weight, and I feel like, I'm always carrying so many things in my purse and my work bag, and my back isn't what it used to be. So I gotta have a lighter book.
Mhm. And it sucks that they're not creating mass market
Oh
paperbacks.
God, that was so sad to
I
hear.
know. I was like, why? They're so easy to
I
carry around.
know.
Like, so read one book at a time or multiple books at a time.
Multiple books at a time. I'm like a chaos monster. I also think I have ADHD, so I will like start three books at a time and then listen to like three on Audible and just like they kind of have to be different though, otherwise I'll get confused.
No, definitely.
Like different authors. So you read like a Western and then a mystery and then like a contemporary or something.
Yeah, sometimes I'll do two mysteries, but they'll be very different. I like to read in a variety of genres, so that like helps. But yeah, generally if it's in the same genre, they should be like different.
One POV or two or more POVs.
Oh man, that's tough. I don't know. I maybe two or more POVs, even though I wrote in one POV, but I kind of for thrillers and mysteries, sometimes I like the kind of head hopping and like the I think it creates a lot of like mystery. So I'd say multiple POVs.
Okay. Hard copy or ebook or audiobook.
Hard copy. Hard copy, but then like I would say I do love an audiobook as well because
Yeah.
I feel like I can do stuff while I'm listening to an audiobook, but I do there's a thrill about a physical book that I'm like such a book hoarder. I have so many. You can sort of see like this is my husband's bookcase over here, but we had to buy like four new bookcases because I can't stop buying like physical books. So
Whitney, keep your mouth shut. So,
Well, I mean, I have books. I mean, I live in a studio apartment, so I technically cannot physically put another bookcase, but I had to buy, but I currently have piles of books on the floor and like on top of the bookcase, but that's
yeah,
just needs I just need to donate a lot of my collection for stuff that has been on my shelf and since I got it and I haven't read. So I have some manga that is still in the plastic.
mhm,
So, um, but there's like a local guy who runs like he tables outside and he's like he'll just get you can just give books to him and he'll like table them and find
oh,
them a new home. It's called like what the Norwood
community library. It's like a
Community
little free
Library
library, but without the little like
I
house.
hutch.
love
Yeah.
that.
Yeah.
So it's just gathering up. And then mostly now, like buying books, buying K-pop albums has replaced buying books. So that's
I
I
love
need to make space for all of that. And and
that.
my girl paper, my boy and girl paper. That like the little cards, little character cards that they all come with.
I love it. I harbor delusions that one day I'm gonna have like a Beauty and the Beast library. I'll like win the lottery and be able to afford that. So I'm like, I shouldn't give away my books for when I have like a whole library to myself.
I know.
And I'm like, I
I
don't
know.
think that's ever like that's not in the realm of possibility right now or in the any foreseeable future. So
Yeah. I'm hoping to move. Well, my lease is up next, like this time next year, a little bit like February of next year, and I don't want to stay. So I'm also dreading having to move. So I'm like, the more
it
I can like,
movers do not like to move books. I get
yeah,
yelled at because they say you can only put like 10 books in a box. Like
yeah,
80% of my belongings are books because you can't was why I made the mistake of putting a ton in one box and the mover was like, I'm not gonna move that.
yeah.
It's too heavy. I was like,
Okay. Then I'll be like, well, dude, what is your job then?
well, I'm like, you just moved like a 400-pound sofa.
Right,
The
exactly.
book
Just
box is lighter than that.
like just
Yeah.
like next time if I ever move, I'll just say sofa on the
That's a good idea. That's what I
yeah. It's like it's sofa. It's like it's not books, it's the sofa.
exactly.
Speaking of sofa, so would you rather read in bed or read on the sofa or couch?
I kind of like reading in bed. I like reading like right before I go to sleep. It's like a good wind down, and it's just like I like the fact that I can just like get cozy in my covers, read and like read myself to sleep. So I'd say the bed, but I also love reading on the sofa. So, but if I had to choose, the bed.
Um, the library or the bookstore?
Oh, that's tough. I mean, I'm probably currently more of a bookstore person because I just have been trying to buy books to support my fellow authors, but I love the library because, and I'm trying to become more of a library person because I literally don't have space for any more books. And so I think it oscillates because there is a certain thrill of being like 20th on the wait list and then suddenly getting the book. I think
Hmm.
for me, sometimes the timing doesn't work out. And so that's why it can be hard because I will not have, once the book becomes available, I'm like, crap, I'm like too busy this week. And so, but like, I really want to say both, but if I had to pick, I would just say bookstore just because I've been frequenting more of them because I've had a lot of friends with debuts that I've bought recently.
Yeah. No,
You'll
totally understandable.
you'll definitely be, I foresee you frequenting the children's section of a library soon,
Yes,
at the
yes,
very least.
yeah, yeah,
So,
yeah, yeah, definitely. Because it doesn't make sense to buy all of those books that they'll like outgrow. And so, and I also like I grew up in a library. Like, my parents took me to our local public library all the time. I have very fond memories. And so I want to bring my little girl to the library because it's just like such a great space to like hang out. And I feel like there's so many like community events. And I remember going like every Sunday and having like circle time and having books read to me. And it's like a very special, I think atmospherically, like I'm never going to spend more than like 10 minutes. Like I'm like in and out in a bookstore, right? Like the most I spend is 20 minutes, but like a library is where you go to like spend time or like,
Hmm.
I love how it can be like, it's like, it's a space where you can get some work done. I mean, we often between like home and work, we don't have that like third space. And I think like
Yeah.
libraries are essential for stuff like that. And so, yeah.
Mm. All right. So this is the question that we have that Whitney and I have a competition between us. Okay, so bookmarks
Mm.
or page corner fold?
Oh gosh. This is really tough because I do one more than the other, but I aspire to use one over the other. So I want to be always a bookmark girly. I really do. And I have them scattered across. There's like no lack of bookmarks in my house, and people buy me nice bookmarks. So I aspire to, and sometimes I do. Sometimes I use a bookmark. But then I hate to say it, I do fold the corners. I don't want to fold the corners. I don't feel good when I fold the corners. But if there's no bookmark, I'll fold the corners. So like I think if I had to pick one that I would probably do bookmarks because that's what I'm aspiring toward.
Okay.
But Whitney, if you were the page, you will look at my books and you will see the corners have been turned.
no, I'm a dog ear pager all day. So it's a tie on that one. You can I'll let you have that one
Do
since
that.
you
I did. It
said.
was hard for me to pick because I think I do in practice dog ear more than I bookmark, but I
Yeah,
want to bookmark more. But it, again, if it's unless it's in reaching distance, I'm like so lazy. So,
valid. I dog ear fold and I also just turn it over. I
yep.
don't close it. I just turn it over.
Hmm. Yeah, well, you know what?
My
Books are
bed is
meant
my
to be
bookmark.
loved. Meant to be loved, they're meant to be used.
Yes. 100% agree. I think and I've always kind of the caveat being it's like if you are lending me your personal copy of a book, I will respect that and like
Mhm.
we'll use a bookmark or like I won't dog ear it, but my personal copy and sometimes even a library copy. I know that's sacrilegious as a librarian. I will dog ear a page. I think it's fine, and believe me, there have been worse handling of books in the
We're
library.
talking about
Oh,
But
there
it,
were are.
but my personal, yes, my personal collection, I will dog ear a page. But if like I would never do that to someone else's property. Just that's rude.
But her reasoning is, and she's like has not been saying this, like she said,
But yeah,
the tree is already dead.
it is already.
Why are we like protecting this paper? I'm like, that's not the point.
I mean, books are not sacred to me. Like they're meant to be handled. I mean, unless it's like for some very specific archival historical reason, like books are meant to be loved, used, flipped through, read again, especially if it's your favorite, to the point where like the pages are brittle. Like I don't have the money or like the access to preserve a lot of them. So it's just like eventually it is going to, except my all-time favorites, eventually like the book is going to be in the hands of another person, either through selling it or donating it. So I just hope that I'm not in bad condition, but I just hope that they will eventually love it as much as I do or I did at the time. But yeah, like unfortunately, like it's already made, like the book is already made, it's already mine, I already spent money on it, or it was lovingly donated through an arc or whatever, and I can do what I want with it at the end of the day. But thank you for this competition. I
Oh
appreciate
my God.
Real hot topic here.
It
it.
really is.
Like we don't debate about a lot. She and I tend to come to agreements about, or have truces on a bunch of stuff. But this is the one topic where it's like no.
Yeah, and she tortures me. She actually did it in front of my face and dog-eared a page just so she could see a reaction out of me.
It
It's
was an
like
arc, mind you. It was just an
it
arc.
was still a you know what? Never mind.
Next and last question
Yes.
before we get to our final one. We don't want to keep you further away from your vacation.
Oh, I love it. I love it. It's also just like the most adorable like argument to have. It's I love it. I love it.
So our last one, reading with tea or reading with coffee.
Oh, that's tough too because I love tea, but I also love coffee. I wish if I can say both, I would say both. But if I can't, then I would say coffee just because as a sleep deprived new mom, I like need that caffeine. And now that I'm not pregnant anymore, I can have like a little bit more caffeine than I'm used to. But tea is like huge in my house where
Mhm.
Sri Lanka is like a huge exporter of tea and I love tea and I have always like 10 different types at home at any time
Mhm.
can drink tea all hours. Like I can have a cup of non like herbal tea in the evening. So it really just depends. If I need the caffeine boost coffee, but if it's, after like 2 p.m., definitely gonna be tea. So
Amazing. So we have two more questions for you, and then we'll do some closing statements and let you go be with your baby. Um, You've been mentioning throughout this entire conversation there's a sequel. Can you talk a little bit more about it, but then also do let us know if you have or book two, or if you have any other projects that you can tell us about, or if you are going to be attending any like conferences or other like book tour events.
yeah, so I do have a book two coming out, which I'm thrilled about. I have a draft. I'm working on edits right now. It is a sequel to The Midnight Taxi. It's going to follow some of the same characters. It's going to be set in New York City, but it's going to explore a different part of New York City. It's a little bit more of a research book. It's about the kind of hidden history of New York City, some of the things that we don't know about or haven't seen, or at least for me, I kind of had to do some investigation into. I thought it was really interesting. There's so much history about the city that I find fascinating. And I can't say more than that without giving too many spoilers away. But it still has the same, like, twists and turns, but hopefully is like a fresh take on a mystery, on a murder mystery. Of course, there's a murder. And it still explores social justice issues because I think that that's an important part for me. And it's a little bit of course, there's still the criminal legal stuff, but it explores another social justice issue, which I think is important. And so I'm really excited about that. That's been really fun. I'm still trying to make it out to different conferences as much as I can. I'm actually going to Hampton's Whodunit next weekend. And so I guess when this is recorded, it will have been passed. We'll see. It's going to be the first car ride with my little baby. So we'll see. We'll see if we come out of the weekend unscathed. But we was invited to that, so that was really lovely. I'm going to be at Thriller Fest this year. I am going to I was invited to go to a writing conference in Utah, so I have a couple conferences that I'm trying to go to. And I'm hoping to do more like local events in the area as the opportunities present themselves. But yeah, that's what I'm working on.
Well, that's great. And yeah, it seems like you'll, oh, and well deserved, you'll have your hands full in the next couple of weeks. So we do have a last question, and it's a question we ask all of our guests, is to ask for them to do a 30-second to 1 minute pitch of their book. So for those who are listening or watching this, they could be interested and to go out and check out your book. So we're going to ask you to do a pitch for the Midnight Taxi. So whenever you are ready, you can go ahead.
Thank you. Yeah, I hope that everyone will check out The Midnight Taxi. It is just a spin on the classic murder mystery trope of the locked room. You know, the room is on wheels, explores the criminal legal system, and it really is a love story to service workers, to immigrants, to New York City culture, and it introduces readers to, all sorts of different types of food and just different things across the city, and also is an ode to my own heritage as a Sri Lankan American. And so it hopefully, if you're not familiar with Sri Lankan culture, it's a great introduction. And if you are South Asian or Sri Lankan, hopefully you see yourself represented in this book, and I hope you'll check it out. Thank you guys so much for this fabulous conversation.
No, that was perfect.
Yes.
It was perfect.
All right. So, yes, you heard it here. Make sure to get a copy of Midnight Taxi. It is for mystery fans and also for readers who just enjoy seeing their hometown, if you're a New Yorker, just really explored very well in this very fast-paced, cozy mystery. And also, if you're a fan of locked room mysteries, this is an interesting spin on it. So make sure to get a copy at your local bookstore and at your library. But we want to take the time to thank Yosha for joining us this afternoon. This was a great conversation and I hope you enjoyed it as well.
I did. This was so wonderful. Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you
And for
so
the
much for
thoughtful
coming.
questions. Of course.
And thank you for everyone who took the time to listen and watch us. You can follow us on Instagram, Threads, Blue Sky to keep an update on other upcoming conversations that we'll be having. And also make sure to subscribe to our website, cupofteawiththatbookplease.com, to be in the know of other more events and also book recommendations that we pass along as well. And also make sure to subscribe to TM Books Chat. We are available wherever you get your podcasts. So thank you, Yosha. Thank you, everyone, for tuning in. And we hope you enjoy the rest of your day. Take care, everyone.
Thanks, everyone. Thank you, Yosha.
Thank you guys.